Hi everyone, this is Tom with the LEC recap of this week, and it's going to be the final recap of the LEC of this year because, well, the LEC has wrapped up its competitive season. We've crowned a champion, and yeah, let's go over the highlights. It's going to be a good one, and let's go. The weekend kicked off with G2 versus Rogue in the semi-finals, and honestly, Rogue coming off the back of a dominant victory against Matthiesen. And before that, a dominant defeat they suffered from Fnatic. I wasn't quite sure what to expect because while they did show a lot of improvement against Matthiesen, I wasn't sure if they could spice it up enough to contest with the likes of G2, who, while they weren't playing clean against Fnatic anyway whatsoever, still I would consider the more flexible team. But I was pleasantly surprised in game 1. G2 started with choosing the red side. They had the advantage of being able to choose the first side, and the red side was actually a pretty big shake-up from their series against Fnatic, because against Fnatic all 5 games they played on the blue side, and on the red side, obviously, because you have that final pick, you can flex a bit more. So I like G2's decision to immediately swap over and see if they can play with the draft a bit more. Now, in the draft itself, they definitely targeted Larsen a lot. They banned Syndra and Azir, and Caps picks up the Orianna, so Larsen couldn't play on that. So Larsen was playing the Akali. Pretty pleasant surprise. Wunder in the top lane had the last pick, and he picked Kayle to counter Finn on the Ornn. And with that, the game got started. Now, I have to say, the early game from Rogue was pretty good. Inspired was playing on the Hecarim, and he was literally ganking everywhere. He was getting kills and just running away with the game, literally as Hecarim and figuratively. Now, in the top lane, Finn was a bit too confident 2 times. He wasn't really having the game of his life. And Wunder played it very well, I have to say. Especially early game, you expect Kayle to have a bit of a difficult time in the early game, but Wunder played it super well. Now, at 15 minutes, though, Inspired was already at a 5-1 score, and Larsen had snatched up a kill, and Hansama had snatched up a kill, so it was a very difficult time for G2 in the early game. And at 20 minutes, it looked good for Rogue, but in the top lane they overextended a bit, and G2, it looked like they were climbing back in the series a bit from there. However, Rogue didn't let this get to them and didn't let a slip up get under their skin and from there on let G2 climb into an even more comfortable position. Instead, they had a pretty good team fight.
At the same time that Wunder's pushing down that bot lane wave, they're not concerned about Rogue starting up the Baron, so G2 attack the map to get some control. Here's an arrow.
Yeah, crucially, that's landed onto Caps. He's already dead, simply cannot get away. The Divine Judgment is not going to be available there. As now here comes Wunder. He's arrived to the fight, but just after his teammate is dead. Mickey cannot get through the Rogue front line, and there's the kick backwards. Mickey is now down. Call the Forge Guard, gets a knock-up on the Perks and Yankos. The flash forward from Hansama, or the dash forward rather. He gets another. Finn gets on the board, and now Wunder's caught underneath the tower. The ultimate doesn't matter. Hansama gets away. That is an ace to Rogue.
And honestly, game 1 was just super dominant from Rogue all over. They obliterated G2 in team fights from here on out and just steamrolled to a victory. The game ended with Inspired at a 7-1 score, Larsen had a 6-1 score, Hansama had a 9-0 score, and Vander, I mean, he's support, right? So he went 0-1 in KD, but his assist, he had 15 assists, which is amazing. So very statement game from Rogue in game 1. Now in game 2, G2 picked red side again. This time Inspired once again got to play the Hecarim, but Mickey, who knows now, I guess, that after playing his series against Fnatic, that Taric is a good answer to Hecarim, now got to play the Taric actually. But Volibear was picked by G2 in the jungle, and that's not something I'm a big fan of because I just think it's a weak pick overall. Doesn't do as much as it did early in the summer split, and many people would agree with that. But anyway, with that, G2 got started, and the early game looked not good again. Larsen got 2 kills very early on, and Inspired was being a far more useful jungler than Jankos was in terms of assisting his teammates. Now, Rogue did fumble a bot fight, but it did give G2 the opportunity to get Drake and get Herald, and that's where you really saw, okay, it's not G2 in their macro decisions that's fumbling. It's more that the team didn't really feel comfortable yet, at this point at least. It seemed like they needed to warm up, as they usually need to do a bit when playing in the first games of a series, after especially having a bit of a break before it. So from there on, like using the Herald and using the little bit of momentum they got, G2 kept applying more pressure. They were pushing against Rogue, and I think this is where Rogue had a bit of trouble answering it. They didn't give up this early lead, G2, and they continued to look for fights and actually win them as well with just better team play coordination. Rogue looked a bit scrambled here. Inspired especially, I think, had a few engages on the Hacker Rim where he just dove into bushes without vision, and there was G2 waiting and they just killed him, or a teammate from Inspired would try to back him up and they got killed instead, and Inspired would walk away. So not very good from Rogue there in terms of keeping their team strategy in line. I think especially Mickey on G2 side played super well on the Taric. Taric is super strong at the moment, and he can get really obnoxious with the healing, and also obviously with the ultimate to save your teammates. But I think he did an exceptional job in that. So despite the early game, a super strong bounce back from G2, which they didn't let go of. And I think overall in this series, I shouted out Mickey earlier, but Caps again was playing phenomenally, as he just, I don't know, this guy, when you watch him, it's just something else. I have to say that Larsen played well in game 1, especially against him, but in game 2, Caps was living up to the mythical status that he has created himself, and G2 won game 2. Now, at a 1-1 score, we're now at a best of 3 scenario. Rogue learned from their lessons to leave Taric open against Hackerim, but when Rogue banned Taric, G2 was quick to ban the Hackerim, so that didn't exactly go as planned for Rogue, maybe. Inspire was put on the Lilia duty with Hansama on the Aphelios, which is a bit of a not necessarily a legacy pick because the champion hasn't been around for so long, but it's Hansama's most played champion in the Summer Split. So Aphelios against Perks on Ashe, and once again, and this has been a trend in the series overall, Rogue got the first kill in the bot lane, and this was a bit made fun of on the broadcast because Mickey had said in an on-broadcast interview that it is pretty cringe to die in a 2v2, but Rogue kept finding the opening kill throughout the entire series. They got first blood in the bot lane with Vander and Hansama finding these right engages and knowing exactly when to strike. So that was pretty good from them. But overall, the early game from there on was pretty quiet. The teams were taking it a bit slower. I think G2 had learned from game 1 not to try to force fights when you are behind, but rather gradually let that climb up to a point where you can actually strike. And Rogue in game 2 obviously had a bit of a scruffed showing, so they were trying to keep it quiet as well. Now, when this kind of got going is when Rogue dove in the bot lane, but G2 turned this around. And I think that was really showing that Rogue was a bit indecisive when to pick targets. Especially because when the engage happened, G2 split in 2, and then Rogue went for I think 2 team members went for one of G2's split team members, and the other one went for the one with one. It's always better to just commit to one target, ensure you get that kill, because this way Rogue actually got 0 kills. Now G2 was at this point fully in the series, and I think Rogue did. Especially Caps, he was playing on the Zoe. It was phenomenal to watch, honestly, because this guy was playing out of his mind. And I think maybe it wasn't G2 entirely that was in this series, but it was mostly Caps, because when you see his engages and the way he played in the champion was, again, sometimes he's just in the matrix and he's just playing on that level that nobody will probably ever reach in the LEC at this moment, maybe at some point, but yeah. The highlight of this match was when Rogue was trying to push in the bot lane with the Rift Herald with 4 members against 0 of Rogue, and then Caps came around on the Zoe to, well, say hello.
Well, they could drop this one 10 seconds away from plates going down. I feel like they had to drop it there to play for the plates. They lose out on a lot of potential gold by not making that play, and that is just too late.
I mean, Caps has still got the flash available to him. He's trying to just fish for Rogue members.
Oh.
So much damage onto Hansama. Sleepy Trouble Bubble, sidestep by everyone on Rogue. The recall has finished now, so Larson manages to make it out, but Caps is not done yet. Paddle Star, not going to find a target. One more time. They're getting a hit by Vander, body blocked.
It's a casual 1v3.
This is insane.
Yeah.
Like, that was a Are you kidding?
And this was kind of the theme of the entire third game. Rogue was having trouble finding the engages, and G2 was swooping in at any point with Caps and Perks, deleting Rogue, who had just, overextended, trying to find a fight. And G2 punished it really hard, but especially Caps in this game was just a walking highlight reel. Engage after engage he found, and yeah, it was, I don't know. This is the performance you want to see from Caps, right? I think in the spring split, this is what you had trouble finding him to see because it was playing in the bot lane. But once again, in the mid lane in summer, you had the Kokmal game where he popped off really hard. Especially is a very memorable one. He played well on Echo, as we saw in the MVP of the split highlight published by Riot. But yeah, I think this is just a performance you want to see from a guy like this, just breaking his enemy's ankles. And G2 won game 3 as well, so 2 games in a row victory for them, and now at a 2-1 score, so on match point actually. In game 4, Rogue decided to swap things up a bit. They picked the red side this time around, so they would have a bit more flexibility in their draft phase. And in the mid lane, there was an exciting matchup, in my opinion, because Larson picked the Akali, and Caps was maybe feeling himself a bit because he picked Aurelia, and obviously a super mechanical mid lane matchup, but not I'm not entirely sure about the Aurelia into Akali. I think, yeah, I don't know. I would just love a mage against something like an Akali to hold her off and keep her at a distance. But anyway, there was this was the highlight of this match for me specifically. But G2 with their composition was really trying to shut down the Akali of Larson before he could pop off. G2 had Leona. G2 had a Cannon in the top lane, and they had Sett, they had Ashe. So all these champions really good at applying crowd control to Akali, preventing her from dashing around. But it didn't really work because Rogue invaded jungle early and threw his pathing off completely. From there on, Inspire just had an enormous lead and advantage over the map presence, and it snowballed throughout the game. Like, because of this, Rogue could go for pushes under the tower. They could try to find ganks because Inspire was just ahead, had more vision, more map awareness, and Jankos was behind from there on. Now, in the mid lane matchup, as I said, which was very interesting, it was this time actually Larson who was the highlight of the match, in my opinion, because he was absolutely having Caps' number. And this is not something you necessarily expect, maybe because Caps has that god status, and while Larson is extremely good, I don't think he has earned that quite yet. But this game, he definitely made a case for himself as to be at least on a level, in a spot where he can maybe climb to that status that Caps has, and maybe eventually climb to that level. Now, yeah, it was pretty dominant from him. In the bot lane, it was a matchup for Rogue as well that was going in their favor, because Hansama and Vander, who, like, I say, like, Larson played really well, Inspired played really well, but Vander and Hansama were playing so well this entire series. It's such a joy to watch, like, this team actually, like Rogue, actually putting up a fight with G2 and actually contesting with them, because, you know, even though the games weren't super clean and there's still a lot of polishing to do before these teams actually want to contest at Worlds, I still think that seeing these teams just step up and contest, it's promising, right? And that's what I really like to see. Now, The highlight of this match actually was towards the end. Rogue won the game eventually. They were just really playing well, and yeah, towards the end of the game is where I found a clip that, in my opinion, was defining for Rogue's victory.
Advantage, plus 6k. A lot of that is obviously on Hansama, so
Yankos.
if he gets taken out, then that could be problematic
Yankos
for
on the
Rogue.
flank.
But look at the damage already coming in. With the help of Vanda and the rest of the engage from Rogue, they've got one. They're about to get their second. That's already Perks and Caps down. The Dredgeland will hold Mickey in place, and he's going to fall last. That's an ace for Rogue.
Now, in the 5th game, 2-2 score, obviously a lot of pressure and a lot on the line, because the winner of this would go to the grand finals against Fnatic. And in the ban phase, in the pick and ban phase, there were a lot of carry bans, so a lot of targeted bans trying to see who could whip out maybe something special. And it was actually Rogue who did it, because they first picked Akali, G2 answered with Senna Hackery, maybe a bit more standard, but Hansama in the bot lane locked in Draven, and that's a legacy matchup, a legacy pick for him. Really a champion he became popular with, and one of the champions he became known for playing. In the top lane though, something I didn't quite like from Rogue was that Finn was put on Aatrox's duty, and I don't know, I think Finn in this series overall had more of a utility based role. He did play his Ornn well. I believe it was in game 3 or like in game 4. No, it cannot have been game 4, but I think he had a good Ornn game this series. But other than that, he was obviously very struggling against Wunder, Wunder who was playing out of his mind. And then putting Finn on Aatrox is not something I like at all, because he requires more playmaking ability, and I don't think Finn has that in him, especially against the likes of G2. He just gets outclassed. So that's not something I particularly liked, but overall, still an exciting lineup from Rogue to go with, obviously. Now, Rogue once again had an invade in jungle, but now not a level 1 invade, as is usual with a jungle invade. No, instead, they took Jankos's blue buff away after taking their own blue buff, so it was a level 2 invade, and it worked out well. And once again, they tried to snowball this advantage and run away with a victory from here on out, right? Hansama and Vander again took the first blood in the bot lane. I don't know what's happening there, but Mickey was you know, swallowing his own words about dying in 2v2 being cringe, because, well, it happens over and over and over again from them in the early stage of the game. Not this game specifically, but in the games in the series. So, in the top lane though, Wunder was, as expected, to have a bit of trouble. Finn was having a bit of trouble against Wunder, and very early on, Finn already was 40 CS down against Wunder. I think this was at something like 12 minutes or something like that. Finn already had missed 40 CS compared to Wunder, and that's obviously a massive goal disadvantage you're putting yourself in. So, yeah, it was really shown that, you know, that skill disparity was definitely being brought to light here. Now, all game long, even though Rogue got that early blue buff steal, G2 was still ahead. I think they were pushing in Rogue, and they were farming off Rogue's mistakes they were making. And especially what they did very well was, as Draven's passive allows him to stack up this, and when you get a kill as Draven, you get a lot of extra gold. Unfortunately, for Hansama, for a very long time, G2 managed to just not give Hansama a kill. The opening kill went to Vander, I believe, actually, in this case. So they were having a lot of trouble finding that cash in for Draven's admiration, I believe is the passive called. Now, Rogue had a moment where they definitely shined, and this final game was actually much closer than I thought it would be, because of the top lane disparity, and also because I wasn't sure about the Draven pick. You know, it's very nice to see people play a champion that they're very well known for, but how good is it in the meta? But actually, yeah, even though G2 had pushed Rogue in for a long time, Rogue found a turnaround.
Lock of the Iron Solari for Shen. You can't fight into G2, and now G2 looking to collapse on Vander and Hansama.
Yeah, there's not enough support from the
fight. Double TP.
Double TP's coming in. Wonder and Mickey a little bit separated. The death sentence will find Hansama, and he cleanses out of it. Larson waiting to look for an engage. Now all 5 members are standing toe-to-toe. Dredgeline will connect, and that's a fantastic ultimate. That's already capped, blown up before he can drop his ultimate. No, can Hansama find the cash in? That's the question. He's turning his attention to Jankos and to Wonder. They simply cannot do it. The initial pick worked out. Rogue managed to find the opportunity to bring themselves back into this game. There's the chase back onto Wonder. The Umbral Chains will pull him backwards. This will be 4 quick kills for Rogue.
Rogue still going here. They're going to be able to find Wonder, and then can they turn it into the Baron? That's the question. Shut down comes through for Hansama, and Rogue heads straight to the Baron.
And yeah, I was skeptical about Finn first, and I think rightfully so, because he really was a lot down in the CS and had a difficult time against Wunder. But in this engage, he was actually the one leading the charge, so that was pretty exciting to see and gave me a lot of hope for Rogue. Now, from there, Rogue was back in the driver's seat. They also won a big fight in the top lane. Now, I don't think that from here on out the gameplay was clean whatsoever. As I said, like throughout the whole series and actually throughout this whole playoffs, I've been very critical and very vocal about the about the level of play shown in Europe. But at least it wasn't even, and Rogue was not backing off in any way. You know, that they realized they had the advantage and were not afraid of G2, which is very promising and very good from them. Now, the game was super messy. And even though Rogue had the advantage, they started to be somewhat indecisive. And I think especially what really frustrated me from them is when they were going for the final dragon. I believe it was 3-3 in Drake's scores. But unfortunately, well...
It's G2 with mid lane priority. They're going to be able to find the collapse. Wonder is so fast coming into this one. G2 are looking for the fight.
Larson can split the team. He's looking for the flank. And the dragon is going low, 2,000 HP. We're going to have a smite fight inside the pit. Who's going to pick it up? And he got it by G2. They get the soul, and they start to retreat. They don't need the fight right now, unless it's on their turn.
Big
sentence connects onto Finn. He's forced to escape with his life for now, and they get the soul. They get out.
So yeah, this was not the best decision Rogue had ever made. I think especially Larson, who was waiting in the bush and just not really doing anything, not really contributing to that team fight. Yeah, this was not a great setup from Rogue. Obviously, props to G2 for capitalizing on that moment, because from here on out, G2 was just too beefy for Rogue to chew through. They had far too much armor, magic resist, and health, so it was nearly impossible for Rogue to find a kill or even find some meaningful damage. And yeah, it sounds pretty dull, but from here on out, G2 just rolled to a victory, being too strong, being too tanky, sieged upon Rogue's base, and closed out this series. And then obviously the final day we had G2 versus Fnatic in the grand finals of the LEC Summer Split. You can say King's Dynasties make some memes about how it's repetitive, but I think this time around the matchup was a bit more hyped, because it had been a while since Fnatic had actually defeated G2 in a best of 5. And I think it was 874 days, if I recall correctly, before last weekend in the semifinals. So this time, you know, everybody was hoping that the finals would be close again, a 5-game series, and that they would go toe-to-toe and have, especially in the 5th game, a very nail-biting ending to the saga. Now, in the first game, G2 actually followed a draft, as they said later, which was inspired by TSM, where they picked Shen in the jungle. Janko said that he, you know, woke up after thinking about it for a long time and actually realized, okay, I'm gonna pick River Shen, as it's called. Now, it didn't go too smoothly for G2 overall in the beginning, because Fnatic got the first 2 kills, but G2 just struck back quickly and evened it out a bit more. And when specifically talking about the Shen pick, it did work out for G2 pretty well, because Janko was all over the map playing Shen and making plays, assisting his team in setting up kills, so that worked out really well for them. And I think I really like this trend where you see one region experimenting with something and then other teams copying it and realizing, oh wow, this actually works, because that's how the meta keeps being shaken up a bit more. I think Caps, once again, like in the series against Rogue, where he had a more difficult game for example, the one with Aurelia, but I mean, Caps was just dominating in the mid lane, as probably expected against Nemesis, who's not been the most stellar mid laner in the LEC this split. He was just breaking ankles, dancing around them, doing damage, and maybe not necessarily always getting kills, but forcing them to retreat, forcing them to go back, and that way extending his lead in the lane. I think what's so interesting for me about this game was that G2, even though they had the lead, they just didn't go for the objectives. What they did with their lead was just, go for towers, push in the lanes. They were very slow to take Drakes. They didn't really want to go for the Rift Herald. They just kept on pushing into Fnatic, and obviously here and there a Drake was picked up, but it wasn't as objective focused as the meta has been in the LEC so far. Now, they eventually got that Dragon Soul pretty easily, with side lanes of G2 being pushed in consistently so very well. And with Caps on LeBlanc, who had, I think, very quickly already 25 stacks in the Veggies, dishing out so much damage that it was too dangerous for Fnatic to try to sneak in and contest or steal a dragon. So they played it safely. G2 got a Dragon Soul, they went for the Baron, and they went for a push in the top lane. And well, if you've watched Game 3 against Fnatic of G2 in the semifinals, you know and will remember that G2 overstayed their welcome in the bot lane when they were taking the tier 3 turret and inhibitor of Fnatic, and got punished hard for it because that gave Fnatic a way back into the game and eventually win that game, even though G2 should have won it easily. Now, this time around, G2 tried to spice things up and instead overstay their welcome in the top lane.
But meanwhile, in the top lane, the shockwave's gonna land. Caps has gone to mid, and Mickey's been caught underneath the tower. Hylissang on the chase. Perkz is gonna die here as well. Oh, he flashes away, and here comes Caps. Nemesis dies. Perkz survives. Hylissang rooted up underneath the remnants of his tower, which was raised to the ground, but it now manages to get the shutdown from Reckless. Fnatic bite back in the final moments of this.
So yeah, even though Fnatic was pushed over by G2, they actually got back up a bit again. I wouldn't say that they were fully into the game, but it closed the gap significantly. And, the game was from here on dragged out just unnecessarily long. G2 kept trying to find picks and kept trying to use the advantage they still had to find a kill and extend it even further and snowball from there. But Fnatic was just repeatedly there to back up their own teammates and turn the fight around. So it was very messy from G2 here. And Caps, who had 25 stacks on Matthiesen already early into the game, fell back to 0 stacks on his Matthiesen. So that's just to paint how much G2 was fumbling their lead and almost throwing away the game. Now, I do say almost, because eventually they did manage to close out the game. They once again, it was just not clean. Eventually got an Elder Dragon, right? And you think, okay, this is where you just close out the game because Elder Dragon is ridiculously overpowered. But no, they got Elder Drake and instead fed 3 kills more to Fnatic, which resulted in only, I believe it was just the bot lane of Perkz and Mickey still having the Elder Dragon buff. So it was very messy, but at at a fairly random moment, they just found a kill on Fnatic just outside their base, and from there on pushed in and ended the game. Not too convincing, but G2 got the first game win. In game 2, Fnatic answered with a LeBlanc ban and also banned Shen, because obviously that had been given them a difficult time in the first game, despite the messy ending in the early game. Especially LeBlanc and Shen were extremely dominant. And surprisingly, Caitlyn was also banned on the blue side by Fnatic. This is surprising because Caitlyn is considered to be ridiculously strong at the moment, which mostly leads to G2, or like not G2, but in this case it would have been G2. But the red side banning it because blue side has first pick, and if Caitlyn is left open, it's almost a guarantee that Caitlyn is locked in by the blue side. So that was a bit of a surprise. Fnatic actually first picked Hecarim instead of a bot laner, or you know, another champion, which I suppose could go to a solo laner or maybe in the duo lane. But a jungler first pick was a bit of a surprise, and they looked also in a Zilean. Now Zilean is played a lot by TSM Bjergsen, but not played at all in Europe. And especially this was a surprise because Zilean went to the top lane. Whippo was put on Zilean duty, and this was I'll admit I was pretty excited to see them play around and flex a bit. So G2 answered it with an Ashe and Lulu, obviously a very good combination, and Sylas in the mid lane for Caps to counter the entire composition of Fnatic, because he could steal a Hecarim ult, he could steal Zilean ult. Yeah, so that's they just had very good ultimates to be stolen on Fnatic's side. So instead of G2 giving away the first blood in the bot lane like they did against Rogue, they actually got the first blood with a bit of a blunder from them there, but Fnatic answered with a kill on Caps. And I think in this game specifically, Fnatic had in the early game did a pretty decent job of keeping Caps in his lane and keeping him tied to the turret, because they just didn't want him to give him that advantage. And they did a pretty good job, because Nemesis was playing on the Corki, was 3-0 over an 0-2 Caps fairly early in the game, so that looked very promising. G2 got a Fire Drake, didn't matter too much yet, and Fnatic was clean while G2 was trying to get a bit more of a grip on the match. But eventually they got that, even though Selfmade in the jungle was playing amazingly well on the Hecarim. I think this was definitely one of his best games in terms of play. You know, he's criticized sometimes a bit because he does his own thing, but well, he did a thing very well, so it was at least very exciting to watch. And yeah, from there on, there was, with Fnatic on 2 Drakes, there was a fight at the Mountain Drake, which I think is worth highlighting, because it signaled, it marked a defining point in the game.
Ornament popped, I believe that is on Perks. He now has an Infinity plus 1 edge. Caps dives onto Nemesis, manages to catch him out, but there's the package is being used. And that's big for the next team fight. Caps very low on HP, but there's a honey fruit there for him to pick it up. Nemesis going to try and put the missiles in from the side. Wonder off the top side of this fight, unable to join it, and in goes the steal, and in goes Selfmade, dives onto the backline. Corner of the board being used as well. Showstopper popped on Hillisang, that's the only one to get it. Death from below doesn't quite hit Jankos, just about surviving with another haymaker. Whippo comes back from the dead with the chrono shift, and now Caps has dived onto the backline and got the shutdown. Pops the stopwatch to keep himself alive, and Perks can step forward. He doesn't have to worry about the horse, he doesn't have to worry about Fnatic. It's a double for Caps. Reckless under the tower is going to fall as well, and it was an impeccable team fight from G2.
So yeah, that third Drake on Fnatic's side ended up actually being really important. G2 may have walked away with the kills, but later on, Fnatic found a great team fight and actually pushed into G2's base, broke 2 inhibitors, retreated because they didn't overstay as G2 tends to do, and got that 4th Drake, so the Dragon Soul. And it really showed that G2 maybe overestimated themselves in that fight, which I just showed in the clip. But yeah, I think even though Fnatic got that soul and you think, okay, your early game was super clean, maybe afterwards it got a bit messier, but you still got a soul, which is a huge buff to your team. You should close out the game from here. This is miraculously where Fnatic just started to crumble. They were looking for a gauge where they shouldn't, and G2, you know, their base got pushed in, but they weren't scared or anything like that, right? They weren't scared of Fnatic at all. They instead actually pushed back, because this time it was Fnatic trying to find kills and sometimes just literally running into G2 one by one trying to find an engage, but G2 punished it really hard and ruthlessly. G2, when you give them an inch, they take a mile, is often said, right? And they use this. They climb back into the game, they just turn it around, and Caps, who in the early game was maybe held in the cage a bit, as fits Silas's lore, I suppose. Caps was finding engages with Silas, using ultimates, using dashes, using flashes, and even though it wasn't him who always got the kill, he was the one leading the charge, and G2 closed out game number 2 with a victory as well. And in game 3, it was G2 actually who decided to make a surprise as in draft phase, because whereas Fnatic banned Caitlyn as blue side in game 2, at this time G2 decided not to ban the Caitlyn at all and leave it open being red side. And Fnatic took this chance. They locked in the Caitlyn and they put Hylissang on Bard, a good combination to protect Caitlyn but also deal a lot of damage from her side. Now, on G2, the most notable pick, I suppose, was Wunder, who locked in Vladimir against Bwipo on the Ornn, which is, you can obviously harass Ornn a lot, being the Vladimir, and also when the game goes in the later stages, you deal a lot of damage as Vladimir, and are virtually unkillable if you play it well. Now, G2 got a few kills early, but Fnatic actually responded well. At 15 minutes into the game, the score was actually pretty even. From there on, I would say though, the game quickly scaled into G2's favor, because it was especially Caps and Jankos who found many engages, and from here on punished Fnatic really hard for their lack of team cohesion. I think that's something that they have been criticized of quite often at this point in the year, that they're not all on the same page, where, you know, you would see some people going for an engage where other people would just still be farming in the lane and actually having no clue what to do. And even though against Rogue they seem to be more on the same page, Fnatic that is, that was really absent from this game 3. Now G2 was getting their Drakes, you know, Infernal Drakes were stacking up from them. They were going for the soul, and yeah, it sounds maybe a bit dull, because I think the game was just not too exciting. There was, you know, Wunder was playing super well on the Vladimir. Jankos was playing super well on the set, I believe he played, and that from here, I don't know, it was just pretty one-sided, even though Fnatic was getting kills. And this was shown most at the end of the game, actually, when G2 was going for their Dragon Soul.
You are in for a world of hurt, and while all of this is happening, while the Infernal Soul is being started up by G2, Wunder takes a turret. Mickey's gonna hook himself away, goes golden, but still drags himself to the terrain. Fnatic gonna step forward, look at Wunder, he's got a flank position off here. He could be so powerful in this fight. He's gonna clear out the mid lane, Wunder coming in, Whipper trying to step forward, Perkz doing what he can with the play of the Ruined King. Ace in the hole's gonna land on the back line, but there's a showstopper used, and Whipper's already dead. Wunder still doing what he can, stepping forward, Nemesis forced away, Perkz flashes forward, looking for the kill, he will fall. South mid goes down. Nemesis goes down, Bwipo goes down, and only Hylissang and Rekkles are alive.
Now on the back half, they did manage to take down and survive Wunder. Rekkles now coming back with the red buff. Can he save the day?
Hylissang flashes, looking for the cosmic binding, but Rekkles gets hooked, and Caps unleashes the full force of Syndra straight into the face of his former teammate, and you have to think that's it. You have to think they're done. G2 wipe Fnatic off them.
And yeah, from here on, G2 just won the game, defeated Fnatic 3-0, and you know what in the end was pretty easy vision, even though G2 was playing very messily, and I really hope they step it up before they get to play at Worlds. But once again, G2 champions of the LEC, 4th time in a row now, and actually the leading team when it comes to LEC championships, with 8 titles under their belt compared to Fnatic's 7. So yeah, congratulations G2, obviously. Now the teams are heading to Worlds now, with G2 as 1st seed for Worlds, and Fnatic as 2nd, Rogue as 3rd, and Mad Lions as 4th. And Mad Lions will have to go through the play-in stage to make it to the main event. And from here on out, you know, this would be the last LEC recap of this summer split, as I said. But I do plan on creating a lot of Worlds content as well, with previews and recaps and interviews. So definitely stay tuned. I also have a few more interviews that will be rolled out, and obviously I will be able to plan a few more leading up to Worlds. So if you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, stay tuned for more content.